you've got critics, you know that. You have them. Even Elvis has critics. Your critics say that you held him back.
Well, if whoever said that, that's fine. They can say what they want to. If I was them, if they know so much, they ought to go in the management business. I've been for 10 years doing nothing. It's unexplainable. They say anybody else could have done it, perhaps so. But I happened to be the one. And if Elvis were alive today, which a lot of us think he still is alive, then I think he would completely agree with me.
Did Colonel Tom Parker really think Elvis Presley faked his death? We have new shocking unseen footage of Colonel Parker when he hinted Elvis is still alive. The footage was taken right before the Colonel passed away. Elvis Presley was loved by audiences around the world, with his electrifying stage presence and status as the undisputed king of rock and roll. While Colonel Tom Parker played a pivotal role in Elvis's rise to fame, his own life was cloaked in a web of secrecy and deception. Here's the dark truth about Colonel Tom Parker. Before we show the new footage, you need to know a few things about Colonel Tom Parker. Starting with, he was neither American nor named Tom Parker. Born in the small Dutch city of Breda, his real name was Andreas van Kuijk. As a teenager, Andreas fled the Netherlands under mysterious circumstances, stowing away on a ship bound for Canada and eventually finding his way to Hoboken, New Jersey. There, he immersed himself in the vibrant but chaotic world of traveling carnivals, adopting the name Tom Parker and systematically erasing every trace of his real identity. Despite living as an undocumented immigrant, Parker never took steps to legalize his status. This decision is particularly baffling given how easily he could have done so. The Alien Registration Act of 1940 offered a straightforward path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. By the 1960s, Parker had the wealth, power, and connections to navigate any potential hurdles. Yet he steadfastly avoided becoming a citizen, a deliberate choice that left him vulnerable and haunted his every move. Parker didn't just obscure his past, he built an intricate web of lies to reinforce his false identity. As Smithsonian Magazine reveals, Parker fabricated an entirely new backstory. He claimed to be a native of Huntington, West Virginia, often declaring, "I was born in West Virginia in the US of A." He went further, insisting his name was Thomas Andrew Parker and strongly implying his title of colonel came from distinguished military service. While Parker did serve in the Army, his record was anything but impressive, with his highest rank being private. His title of colonel was honorary, granted by the governor of Louisiana in 1948 for his work on a political campaign. What's truly remarkable about Parker's deceptions is how long they endured. For decades, Parker wielded immense power in the entertainment industry. He negotiated multi-million-dollar deals for Elvis, cultivated a reputation as a shrewd and ruthless operator, and amassed a personal fortune, all while maintaining an air of mystery. Astonishingly, no one dug deeply enough into his past to uncover the truth. His real identity remained hidden until Parker was in his 70s, long after Elvis's tragic death. Colonel Tom Parker remains a paradox, a man whose cunning and ambition propelled Elvis Presley to global superstardom, but whose own life story is a tangled web of lies, secrecy, and unanswered questions. Colonel Tom Parker's life was a masterclass in reinvention, a testament to the lengths one man could go to hide the truth. His shadow loomed over Elvis Presley's career, influencing every decision while concealing a murky past that only came to light decades later. After slipping into the United States illegally from the Netherlands in the 1920s, Colonel Tom Parker's journey took a surprising turn when he joined the US Army in 1929. His initial 2 years of service passed without issue, but trouble began brewing when he re-enlisted in 1931. By 1932, Parker abandoned his post, officially going absent without leave, AWOL. Arrested shortly after, Parker faced military imprisonment, marking the beginning of a dark chapter in his life. Parker's time in military prison was brutal. he endured months of solitary confinement, which reportedly left him mentally and emotionally scarred. According to the New York Times, Parker experienced a severe breakdown during this period. Following his release from confinement, he spent several months at Walter Reed Army Hospital, where he was diagnosed with a constitutional psychopathic state. By the end of 1932, Parker was discharged from the Army, leaving his military career and its psychological toll behind him. When World War II erupted, the U.S. Army scrambled to draft men into service, with countless individuals volunteering to fight. Parker, however, had no intention of re-enlisting. His prior experience with the Army, particularly his desertion and imprisonment, had soured him on military life. Facing the possibility of being drafted, Parker devised an unusual strategy to avoid service. He deliberately gained a significant amount of weight. The Army, even during wartime, maintained strict physical fitness standards for recruits. Parker's scheme proved effective. He quickly reached around 300 pounds, far exceeding the acceptable weight for service. His morbid obesity rendered him unfit for the draft, allowing him to dodge military duty entirely. Colonel Tom Parker projected confidence and bravado, especially as the mastermind behind Elvis Presley's meteoric rise. He loved to boast about his role in managing the king of rock and roll and often took a hefty share of the earnings. But behind his swagger was a deeply paranoid man whose fears severely impacted Presley's career and cost both of them millions. Despite his worldwide fame, Elvis Presley performed outside the United States only 3 times, all in Canada during 1957. Notably, Parker didn't accompany him on these tours. His fear of being exposed as an illegal immigrant living under a false identity kept him firmly rooted in the US. After this, Parker consistently rejected lucrative offers for Presley to perform internationally. Deals to tour Europe and Japan, worth millions, were left on the table. British music promoter Harvey Goldsmith revealed to the Washington Post that Parker outright admitted Presley would never perform in England because Parker couldn't risk leaving the country. This extreme caution came at a high price. When Presley passed away, his estate was valued at just $7 million, a stark contrast to what he could have earned had Parker allowed him to capitalize on international tours. Parker's paranoia and secrecy have long baffled historians. While it's true that living under an assumed name as an illegal immigrant gave him reason to avoid scrutiny, his refusal to rectify his immigration status remains puzzling. According to Smithsonian Magazine, clearing his legal status would have been relatively straightforward, so why didn't he? Some speculate that Parker's fears ran far deeper than deportation. There's a chilling possibility that Parker harbored an even darker secret. He may have been a murderer. This theory stems from his abrupt departure from the Netherlands. Parker left his homeland under mysterious circumstances, and rumors suggest he may have been fleeing a violent crime. While definitive proof of murder has never surfaced, the shadow of this suspicion hung over Parker's life, adding yet another layer to the enigmatic figure who controlled one of music's most legendary stars. As writer Alana Nash recounts, a chilling mystery from Colonel Tom Parker's past raises unsettling questions. A journalist in Parker's homeland, the Netherlands, received an anonymous letter accusing Parker of murdering the wife of a greengrocer on Boschstraat, a bustling street in Breda. Intriguingly, there is an unsolved murder in Boschstraat that aligns with Parker's timeline. In 1929, Anna van den Enden was found brutally beaten to death behind her husband's grocery store. The scene bore signs of a desperate search for money and valuables, with efforts made to obscure evidence. While there's no concrete proof that Parker committed the crime, the lack of leads in the police investigation and the timing of his sudden departure from the Netherlands fuel speculation. Could this unresolved murder explain Parker's obsession with secrecy and his hurried flight to America? Managing the world's biggest musical act might seem like an easy job, especially when Elvis Presley's fame practically guaranteed success. Offers poured in for Colonel Tom Parker regardless of his strategies, yet Parker exploited Elvis financially in ways few could have imagined. By 1966, Parker was taking an astonishing 50% of Presley's earnings, a far cry from the industry standard of 10 to about 15%. His greed reached new heights in 1973 when he sold the rights to Elvis's recording catalog to RCA for a shockingly low $5.4 million, a fraction of its true worth. Why did Parker need so much money? One answer lies in his addiction to gambling. According to the Daily Express, Parker's financial troubles were a major driving force behind his relentless exploitation of Elvis. He reportedly pushed the singer to grueling schedules, including performing 2 shows a night, 7 days a week during his Las Vegas residencies. These relentless demands were less about Presley's career and more about keeping Parker's mounting casino debts at bay. Reflecting on this period, Parker once said, "So I did my part. Elvis did his show and we were lucky. Great talent. We had a great show and a lot of fun." But the reality was far from fun for Elvis. The pressure to perform took a devastating toll on his health. Overworked and exhausted, Elvis turned to prescription medications to keep up with the relentless pace. His physical decline was unmistakable. He gained significant weight and often sweated profusely through his rhinestone-studded jumpsuits during performances. These struggles were a stark contrast to the vibrant icon who had once revolutionized rock and roll. Elvis's career wasn't just marred by overwork. It was also held back by Parker's penchant for safe, profitable choices. Presley starred in a slew of poorly received films, which, despite their lackluster quality, raked in massive profits, $2.2 billion in domestic gross alone. The soundtracks and tie-in albums added even more revenue, making it clear why Parker ignored Elvis's pleas for better scripts. Yet, there were golden opportunities that could have transformed Presley's legacy as an actor. Parker turned down roles that went on to define careers, including the lead in West Side Story, Jon Voight's breakout role in Midnight Cowboy, and the part Chris Christopherson made famous in the 1976 remake of A Star is Born. Parker's refusal stemmed from his desire to stick with guaranteed money from formulaic films and live performances, as well as his obsession with preserving Elvis's established image. Unfortunately, this left Presley frustrated and creatively stifled, while rock music surged forward with revolutionary acts like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Meanwhile, Elvis was stuck singing lackluster tracks like "Yoga is as Yoga does." Despite the setbacks, Elvis Presley's earnings over his career were staggering, estimated at up to $1 billion. As the Los Angeles Times observed, Parker recognized the immense value of Elvis's brand and knew he could generate millions at a moment's notice by booking a tour, recording an album, or securing a film deal. But Parker's greed ensured he took far more than his fair share. Their original contract granted him an unprecedented 25% of Presley's earnings, a figure that ballooned to an extraordinary 50% by the late 1960s. To make matters worse, the deal also allowed Parker to charge additional fees for various services, further diminishing Elvis's share of the profits. Parker's relentless exploitation of his only client didn't just impact Presley's bank account, it constrained his artistic potential and contributed to the struggles that ultimately led to his untimely death. While Parker played a pivotal role in making Elvis a global sensation, his greed and obsession with control cast a dark shadow over the King's legacy. Over time, the wildly lopsided financial arrangement between Elvis Presley and his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, reached an almost unbelievable climax. Parker actually made more money than Elvis himself. According to the Washington Post, this imbalance became glaringly apparent in 1973 when Parker sold the rights to Presley's recording catalog to RCA for a mere $5.4 million. Out of that deal, Parker pocketed $1.5 million more than Elvis, an astonishing outcome that underscored just how deeply Parker's financial manipulation had taken root. For decades, Andreas van Kuijk, the man the world came to know as Colonel Tom Parker, skillfully maintained an elaborate facade, concealing his true identity and his murky past. He rebranded himself as an all-American entrepreneur, spinning tales of a West Virginia upbringing and a distinguished military career. However, the cracks in this carefully constructed illusion eventually began to show. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, Parker found himself at the center of intense scrutiny, both legally and publicly, and the truth about his enigmatic life started to unravel. The turning point came in 1981 with the publication of Albert Goldman's controversial biography of Elvis Presley. The book cast Parker in an unflattering light, accusing him of exploiting Presley financially and emotionally while revealing his real identity as an undocumented immigrant from the Netherlands. Goldman exposed the secret Parker had fought so hard to keep hidden for decades. His real name was Andreas van Kuijk, and he had entered the United States illegally as a young man, leaving behind a shadowy history in Breda, his Dutch hometown. Simultaneously, Parker faced legal troubles on another front. Priscilla Presley, Elvis's ex-wife and the executor of his estate, filed a lawsuit against him, alleging financial misconduct and unethical behavior in his management of Elvis's career and earnings. By this time, questions about Parker's business dealings and his disproportionately large share of Elvis's profits had become impossible to ignore. The lawsuits, combined with mounting public criticism, began to dismantle the carefully guarded reputation Parker had cultivated for so long. Faced with the possibility of criminal charges stemming from these allegations, Parker resorted to an audacious and bizarre legal maneuver. In a desperate attempt to avoid prosecution, he claimed that he was a citizen of no nation and therefore not bound by the laws of any country. Parker's argument rested on a peculiar interpretation of his military service. He asserted that by serving in the U.S. Army without authorization from the Dutch government, he had forfeited his Dutch citizenship. And since he had never pursued naturalization as a U.S. citizen, he argued that he was effectively stateless. While this legal theory was never tested in court, it revealed Parker's cunning and his determination to evade accountability. It also underscored the lengths to which he was willing to go to protect himself, even as his reputation and influence crumbled around him. Parker's legal troubles and the public revelations about his past marked the beginning of the end for the once dominant manager. Following Elvis Presley's tragic death in 1977, Parker's life had already begun to descend into obscurity. Without the king of rock and roll as his client, Parker struggled to remain relevant in the entertainment industry. His health deteriorated, and his compulsive gambling habits, which had plagued him for years, drained much of his once vast fortune. Despite the millions Parker had earned during his career, his financial state became increasingly precarious. He had spent lavishly, often gambling away significant sums in Las Vegas casinos, where he was a familiar figure. By the time of his death in 1997, at the age of 87, Parker had squandered much of his wealth and was far removed from the power and prestige he had once wielded. The man who had orchestrated Elvis's meteoric rise was now a shadow of his former self, remembered more for his controversies than his achievements. Colonel Tom Parker's legacy remains deeply intertwined with that of Elvis Presley. On one hand, he was a marketing genius whose unorthodox strategies helped catapult Elvis to unprecedented fame. Parker was instrumental in turning Elvis into a global icon, securing lucrative record deals, orchestrating groundbreaking television appearances, and creating a merchandising empire that set new standards for celebrity branding. Yet Parker's greed and manipulative tactics cast a long shadow over his contributions to Elvis's success. He famously negotiated contracts that gave him an unprecedented share of Elvis's earnings, starting at 25% and eventually climbing to a staggering 50%. These arrangements were far above the industry standard and left Elvis with far less than he deserved, despite his immense talent and hard work. Even after Presley's death, Parker continued to profit from his legacy, often at the expense of Elvis's estate. One of the most controversial aspects of Parker's management was his refusal to allow Elvis to tour internationally. While this decision was officially attributed to logistical challenges and security concerns, many believe it was rooted in Parker's fear of leaving the United States. As an undocumented immigrant living under an assumed identity, Parker likely worried that international travel would expose his legal status and jeopardize his carefully constructed persona. This paranoia cost Elvis millions in potential earnings and deprived fans around the world of the chance to see the King perform live. Parker's influence on Elvis's career also extended to his creative choices, often with detrimental effects. He prioritized financial gain over artistic integrity, signing Elvis to a string of low-quality films that were profitable but critically panned. These movies, while financially successful, frustrated Elvis and limited his ability to evolve as an artist. Meanwhile, the music world was undergoing a revolution, with groundbreaking acts like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones redefining the genre. Trapped in a cycle of formulaic films and overexposure, Elvis struggled to keep up with the changing landscape, a situation many attribute to Parker's short-sightedness and obsession with quick profits. In the years following Elvis's death, Parker's role in the singer's life and career has been the subject of intense debate. Supporters argue that Parker's business acumen and promotional savvy were crucial to Elvis's success, while critics contend that his greed and control ultimately stifled Elvis's potential and contributed to his decline. The revelations about Parker's true identity and his exploitative behavior have further complicated his legacy. While he played a central role in creating the phenomenon that was Elvis Presley, his actions also highlight the darker side of fame and the cost of blind ambition. For all his achievements, Parker's life serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of deception, greed, and the relentless pursuit of power. Today, Colonel Tom Parker remains a polarizing figure in the history of popular music. A man whose brilliance as a promoter was matched only by the controversies that continue to define his story. His life, marked by secrecy, manipulation, and larger-than-life ambition, is a reminder of the complexities behind even the most dazzling legacies.